Ses, ses. Sound check, ses. Ses deneme.
Oh yeah, this also, time to time. Yes.
Now it works. Thank you very much. So we are very good morning, everyone, and we acknowledge that it's very early morning. So it's and it's already conference is running, and it's the day before the last. So people, of course, are getting from all those activities we have here. It's becoming more and more difficult, I understand. So, but what I suggest now, because we have a very cozy setting, if people could, if we could move closer to here, because there's some, and so we could have a little bit more cozy discussion with everyone closer to each other. So, and so this is, so first of all, before opening it up, I'll just want to introduce, so again, I want to welcome everyone. This is the 7th meeting of the Dynamic Coalition on Internet and Climate Change, and I think we've had a good track record of the work. It doesn't, and this meeting is to reflect on that, and we have some participants here. We also have another side event that immediately after this meeting, where with some more presentations of various stakeholders what is doing. So our coalition is working well. But I think before I go into the more detailed comments, I would like to pass the floor and ask His Excellency Minister Hassanul Haqqinu to open the meeting and to give the opening remarks and to present what Bangladesh is doing in that area and what's important for us. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. Well, I had been to this Dynamic Coalition meeting previously. Let me start by saying that Bangladesh is the most vulnerable country in the world vis-a-vis climate change. At the moment, if there is an 89 centimeter rise in sea level, 25% of Bangladesh will be underwater. And 18 million people will be climate change refugee. That is one of the position. But because of the changes in the climate change, which cannot be justified technically, but the effects are visible and we are being affected by that. For example, the monsoon rains cycle has been changed. That affects the whole agricultural situation of the country. And we Bangladesh, in the coastal belt, we have the largest mangrove forest of the world. That is a World Heritage, and that is a sanctuary for fish breeding also, because almost half of the mangrove forest is underwater during a part of the daytime and night time is tidal, within the tidal cycle. So the water level rises and comes down, but the trees grows up to almost 100 feet, 200 feet trees, mangrove forest. Well, we belong to South Asia also, and South Asia is in the north, covered by the Great Himalayas, and there are evidence of glacial retreat in the Himalayas, and because of the climate change effects, we are experiencing sudden and frequent cyclones which are threatening the coastal belt, change of the monsoon rains, as I said, which is hitting the agriculture. We are experiencing flash floods because we are is a deltaic basin. The water is coming from the upstream from the India, Bhutan and Nepal. So suddenly we are experiencing flash floods. So naturally, these are the certain phenomena as we are noticing at this moment. But Bangladesh at the moment is the second largest fish production countries of the world within top 10. And Bangladesh is the sixth agricultural production country within the world, in the sixth position. So you can understand we have 160 million people only in 160,000 square kilometers. But it is second in inland fisheries and in the top 10 of the world and sixth. So that is one of the position of Bangladesh. As you know that in our country and in other developing countries, river is being encroached in three ways: physically, chemically, and biologically. So that is polluting the whole river system. These are certain things which I mentioned to come to the point that how ICT can be applied to mitigate and adapt to this situation. In the meantime, we are coping up with the cyclones, flash floods, and the salinity intrusion from the sea into the coastal belt and desertification in the top. Bangladesh is now almost supposed to be the adaptation capital of the world. We have developed salinity tolerant rice seeds. We have developed flood tolerant rice seeds. That means when the water level rises, it is not, the rice plantation is not submerged. The rice plant grows with the level of the water. So the production is there. We have drought tolerant seed in the north, so where water is less. So three types of seeds we have already invented, and we are producing rice in three different categories. We are coping up with the flood, we are coping up with the drought, we are coping up with the salinity in the south. So the point is now almost we have a fishing community who are on the sea all the time, 24 hours, 7 days, 365 days. Almost 100,000 people are on the sea, they are fishing. And from the coast they go up to 100 kilometers with small trawlers. Now how we apply ICT? ICT, all the fishing trawlers are equipped with a very small warning system and gadgets. So it takes them almost 6 to 7 hours to come back to the coast if the proper warning is there. So the loss of lives is not that much. At the moment there is if you have an early warning system about the climate, the early warning system will help you to save the lives and also help to save the property. In the we are in Bangladesh, the experience is we are going for risk reduction plan number 1, disaster management plan 2, after disaster recovery plan. In the risk reduction plan, upgrading telecommunication infrastructure in the whole country, especially in the coastal belts. Early warning system we have developed with mobile phones, radio network and radio frequencies. Then we can, by plotting data on the weather report, we can predict the possible cyclones. So that saves life. And response to disaster. Then emergency response and relief efforts, we have developed a team and task force. So after this cyclone is hit, because of the very good mobile network and radio network and community network, Bangladesh can reach the people quickly because many of the infrastructure is destroyed. But by applying ICT, applying the broadcasting network, we can save life. So For this, we think that the emergency communication standard operation procedure should be developed internationally to face this thing, and how to upgrade the telecommunication infrastructure in the coastal belt and in the country, which is vulnerable to natural disasters. So that is another area where we can apply our mind technologically. There are certain regulatory barriers which hinders movement of tele-resources. So Bangladesh is trying to identify, and I will ask the world community and ITU especially to remove these regulatory barriers, be identified and be removed, so that the movement of the telecom resources to the disaster-prone zone to mitigate and adapt to the climate change effects. We need to develop a data bank. Data banks, for example, you can go for the whole coastal belt. We have 22 million people living in the coastal belt who are regularly affected. So these 22 millions data banks mean how they cope up with these cyclones and disaster, how they change their livelihood, how they adapt to new livelihood. Also, that is very important. So how they are switching to their new system and adapting to the new system, how they are coping up with the disasters. So this data bank is very important, because if we have the data bank, and here ICT can be applied very efficiently, and which will help the planners to plan and take necessary actions to save their lives and save their production cycle. Then there is, because we live in a zone, and many countries of the world also live in a zone. So we are in South Asia, and we have 54 rivers coming from the upstream, pouring into Bangladesh deltaic basin. Here, we need to develop a cross-border governmental team. That is very important, because alone Bangladesh cannot cope up with the national disaster. So there is we say that 3-tier planning is necessary: global, for greenhouse emissions and all these things. Second is regional and national. So 3-tier comprehensive planning is necessary to mitigate and adapt to climate change. For that, cross-border governmental team is very important. They will look into the glacial retreat, they will look into the desertification in the Himalayas, they will look into the drought system, and they will look at the change of monsoon cycle in the region. They will look at the fresh flood sequence and cycles in the region. That will help to plot and develop a strategy to mitigate and adapt. And we need also a globally and regionally harmonized frequencies. So that is important for disaster management. And so let us establish standards for energy efficient ICT equipment could leverage or mitigate carbon emissions across the sectors, including healthcare, power, financial sectors. So time has come, because you know ICT equipments are emitting greenhouse gases. So ICT equipments are polluting the environment. But the challenge is how ICT equipments can be designed so that carbon greenhouse gases is less emitted. That is one challenge which that Bangladesh cannot do it alone. It needs a international community to look into the whole thing, to design those equipments will emit less carbon gases emission, because in Bangladesh we are applying ICT in almost all sectors, from governance to health sector. Already we are applying in the agriculture sector, in the citizen service sector. So naturally, Bangladesh application, there is another phenomena. The TV sets and the computer PCs, personal sets, are almost across the world. You will see that at night they are not switched off. That is a problem. So how we go for a national and international awareness campaign that switching on the TV sets and the PCs 24 hours, that pollutes the environment. And another important thing which I think technical community will have to look about the cloud computing. Does cloud computing entail greater or reduced carbon emissions? That is to be assessed and seen. And what to put the server farms? And government and industry need to promote sustainable ICT's equipment, so that it have a minimum impact on the environment. So how ITU, who as a international organization, can come up with their advice and technical advice to look into the whole things, that is important. Another thing, teleworking can reduce carbon emission, greenhouse gases. That means sitting in an office and not moving in the cars to the office. So teleworking, if you increase the teleworking system within a national borders, that will save the carbon greenhouse gases emission very much. So, and another thing is low carbon ICT solutions in the broadband plans. In digital strategies, create a web tool for identifying leadership in this respect. Because Bangladesh is planning by 2015 that at least 40% of the population will have direct broadband connection. So the broadband connection is very important, is necessary, because if you want to digitize the society, if you want to bridge the gap between the urban and rural, and close the gap of the digital divide, then Bangladesh people need to, or any developing countries people need to have an access to broadband. And so here, low carbon ICT solution in the broadband plan is very important, which we have not developed. I think the global community need to address this issue, how you develop a low carbon ICT solution for broadband plan. So having said that, there are certain E106 on International Emergency Preference System for Disaster Relief. That has been a standard proposed by the, I think, ITU. So having said all these things, let me say that ICT can be used to mitigate and adapt for climate change effects. And Bangladesh is already doing and trying to apply ICT using mobile phone networks, radio frequencies, community frequencies, and developing an early warning system, a database for the cyclonic things, flood things, and other things. So database is very important, how you analyze the database, how the analytics can help you to save millions of lives. So having said that, let me say, okay, thank you very much. I think ICT do pollute the environment, but there are ways and means which you can reduce it. But ICT can be applied in such a way that will help adapt and mitigate the climate change effects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency. And I think this was a very good agenda-setting remarks, I think, showing what still needs to be done, both nationally, regionally, internationally, I think, and that's in some regard some of the proposals for what coalition could be doing as well, at least contributing to. So thank you very much. And now I'll just, on behalf of ITU, and I think it's my pleasure also to just contribute some, to share our thoughts on the work of Dynamic Coalition on Internet and Climate Change, and what we are doing and how we are contributing to that work. So this is already, as I mentioned in the very beginning, this is the 7th meeting of Dynamic Coalition. So we've been together for 7 years, and I think so far we've seen various activities being developed, and we see good engagement with the stakeholders. So this Dynamic Coalition on Internet and Climate Change has contributed to stimulating awareness on the power of Internet and green information and communication technologies to combat climate change, boost environmental efficiency and sustainable development across all societies. Internet and ICTs have redefined the world as we know it, and with the capability to transcend time and space, have shaped the way we communicate, create, disseminate, store, and manage information, creating an even more connected world. However, our world is still, as it's redefined by ICTs, still experiences many challenges. Population growth, energy consumption, greenhouse gas emission, and the ever-impending climate change have led to the push for sustainable development. The economist John Maynard Keynes noted that the difficulty lies not with the new ideas, but in escaping the old ones. Therefore, though we developed and pressed the concept of sustainability, we're still far from achieving it owning to our sustainable behaviors. But we have another scientist, Stephen Hawking's perspective, which says that intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And I nevertheless would like to say that intelligence in the form of ICTs is our answer to adapt sustainability to change. Internet and green ICTs have a potential to address most global challenges and lead to a sustainable future. Green ICTs, Internet with low environmental burdens facilitates various improvements in environmental performance, such as lowering energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. Its use improves efficiency in all sectors, in accuracy and speed, as well as enhancing communication and acquisition of skills towards increased productivity across the economy and society. Green ICTs will undoubtedly create a sustainable future, which is no longer just a requirement, but it's a necessity which is imperative for our sustained life on this planet. ITU, naturally, as part of its mandate to secure a sustainable future, has been raising awareness on the importance and opportunities of using green ICTs, as well as standards to build a green economy. Hence is the reason we are all here today and we contribute to this coalition. And I have no doubt that this meeting is also, we discussed, we have people here to make an effective platform for sharing information and getting each of us inspiration of green ICT practices on future needs and how we can use the internet to build a green economy and a sustainable future. ITU, as the UN specialized agency responsible for ICTs, is developing policies, regulatory frameworks, innovative solutions, and international ICT standards that enable monitoring, promote adaptation and mitigation, and reduce energy consumption. And ITU does that through our World Conferences of Developmental Policies, and we recently had this year our World Communication Development Conference in Dubai, where we had 1,300 participants agreeing on a next development agenda, including activities on climate change. International standardization, and again we've been releasing standards on importance in terms of climate change, and now international treaties on the use of the radio spectrum and satellite orbit and international communications. And also, Minister mentioned the need of discussing the need of radio frequencies for the specific emergency response. And again, next year we have our landmark event, which is World Radio Conference, which is again discusses the allocation of radio spectrum globally. And no doubt this topic will also be informing and also shaping its discussions. ITU's work on climate monitoring have primarily been focused on recommending the use of ICTs, including radio and telecommunication technologies, standards and supporting publications, for weather forecasting, climate monitoring, predicting, detecting and mitigating the effects of natural disasters. ITU also works to ensure availability of radio spectrum for climate monitoring, to develop international standards to enhance climate monitoring, to carry out studies in order to increase the use of remote sensors and so on. For example, we also have a long-standing work with other organizations on using the submarine cables for climate change prediction and for disaster prediction, and how we can use that infrastructure everywhere on the ocean floor to improve our abilities to predict important events. Moving on to climate change adaptation, as we all know, climate change is a complex challenge. ICTs can help countries build resilience by offering tools to support decision-making processes, knowledge sharing, building partnerships and stakeholder collaboration, awareness raising, and community engagement. Also, public safety is a priority for all countries. ICTs can make a huge difference in disaster preparation, early warning and response, because data collecting for monitoring will be used for disaster preparations. And as we see this, especially response and preparation elements of disaster management is becoming more and more imminent in our minds as we see climate change, and when we see more and more events happening in various parts of the world that needs a fast response, and then it needs important recovery. And this is now starting one of the topics that starts to dominate the news from various parts of the world. Climate change mitigation involves a reduction in the concentration of greenhouse gases, either by reducing their sources or by increasing their sinks. ITU believes that ICT-based technologies can have a systemic impact on other sectors of the economy and the society, and can help in providing a basis for sustainable development. Sustainable development cannot become reality in isolation. Much more is needed to develop and apply clear and measurable policies and initiatives to improve environmental performance of ICTs, encourage improvement of environmental performance along the entire life cycle, as well as promote ICT applications and to make non-ICT sectors more resource efficient. And as we know, most as well established practice, even though ICTs only contribute around 2% of greenhouse gas emissions, use of ICTs has a potential to reduce that to greenhouse gas emissions in other sectors of the economy for 15 to 25%. That means that, this is ICTs, as we say in Sustainable Development Agenda, is not a problem, it is a solution. Let's therefore turn from spectators into participants, seize this opportunity, debate these issues, let's share respective views and commit our energies to the realization of a sustainable future using the power of internet and green ICTs. And we are, as ITU, as an organization, we're committed to that. We have a very strong agenda in related to climate change frameworks and activities, and we will take part in the UN summit organized by Secretary General this September as well, as a side event to the General Assembly on the related to re-energizing our efforts of working on the climate change as a whole community. We, as I mentioned, we have important events next year, including our radio spectrum, and this is our commitment to that area. We believe that ICTs should be fully harnessed as a solution, should be fully presented as a solution, and we should also understand that in our community, and also help other communities to understand how they could use that to that regard. So this is ITU's contribution, and I also would like then to ask Mr. Giacomo Mezzoni from European Broadcasters Union to share, your activities, your work, and your views on that area as it is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Honourable Minister. The EBU is the European Broadcasting Union, and is one of the 8 broadcasting unions of the world that are gathered in the family called World Broadcasting Union. And we act in a very coordinated manner with these other members. The broadcasting is in a transition phase. In Europe, this transition phase is near to the end with the digitalization of the signal. That means that in Europe, most of Europe now, the signal is totally digital, except a few countries. And this process, as you know, has a deadline next year all over the world in June 2015. We don't know if it will be matched all over the world, but this is the trend. This trend has an impact also on carbon emission, because there is this transition implies a lot of changes in the chain of production and the chain of transmission of the broadcasting signal. The main change is that in the past we have a very simple chain. Was one broadcasting signal, and broadcast means reaching everybody, so was one communicator reaching everybody, while in the new digital environment it's now possible to combine the broadcasting with a narrowcasting, with an individual casting that happens through combination of broadcasting and broadband. This has an impact on climate change too, in the sense that the transmission, the passage from analog to digital reduce energy consumption in a certain sense. But if you combine the digital transmission terrestrial to the broadband transmission that you are obliged to do in order to provide to your viewers the possibility to access through broadband network, it means that you multiply the transmission of the signal for each individual that receives the signal. So if you have a webcasting, you reduce this signal because you concentrate and you oblige the viewers to follow like a broadcasting transmission on the broadband. So you have a reduced consumption. But if you have individual accessing each program individually, this means that the same program has to be retransmitted by the server to each individual each time. If you do this, if you multiply this, for instance, for the 4 billion viewers of the World Cup, if all the World Cup viewers will access to the signal of the World Cup event through a one-to-one connection, this will destroy all the communication system, all the network, because the signal will be so big that cannot be supported by the existing network. So we have a problem there that is a growing problem, because we have seen that, and I will explain better in detail in the next panel, where we have a presentation about what has been achieved in the broadcasting sector. We are reducing consumption in the normal transmission because of the analog to digital move, but we are increasing carbon emission because of the multiplication of the platform and the one-to-one access. The new motto for broadcasting, that is to view a program anytime, anywhere, anyhow, means that you multiply the same signal transmission. Anytime means all around the day. Anyhow, it means through multiple platforms. Anywhere means that has to be spread around a different kind of network that cover all the possible places. So this is one issue that is the issue on which we are concentrating now, and we have to see how we can tackle with that. Technology has not still find a solution for reducing the impact of that. There are other impacts of the digitalization that we are coping with, and this is, when we talk of digitalization, we mean mainly transmission digitalization. There is also digitalization of the production. More and more the production is becoming digital, full digital, so it means that we are moving from broadcasting technology, purely broadcasting technology, to digital technology. So more and more we are going to using servers, and these servers produce carbon emission because they need to be refrigerated, etc., etc. So this is another side effect of digitalization, while one of the big achievements that has been developed by technology in the last year is the cold lighting in the studios, because we are moving from the old transmission, the old lighting equipment that were very energy consumption based to new lower consumption based lighting systems that of course create also problems, because we are used to have this hot light when you look at the studio, and when you go to the cold light, there is an impact also on the image and on the habits of the viewers. This to mention that as EBU and as other organization of the Broadcasting Union, our main efforts consist in identify which are the problems, identify who among the members has developed best practices, and to try to circulate these best practices in order to speed the process of enhancement, and in order to make all members able to share the progress that the most advanced have achieved in the past. This work also consists in cooperating within the international organization. This is why we are here, because within the ITU, we participate to many groups on which we focus on how to reduce carbon emission in the ICT industry. Last year we cooperated to the production of this toolkit that is very useful, because we have spread all around all the members, and the members, they have all possible ideas of how to cope with the new problem and how to reduce the carbon emission in the old technologies. But broadcasting has also other important roles to play in this field. I'm pleased to listen from the Minister and also from ITU that communication is essential, and broadcasting still, especially in the developing world, play a very crucial role for spreading at the same time the same communication to everybody. That is essential for disaster prevention, and is essential for disaster recovery and for management of crisis. The experience of the tsunami in Japan a few years ago showed that the most resilient way of communication that was lasting even after a few days of collapse of the power system was the radio. That is the oldest media, electronic media that we know, but it was the most resilient. After 1 week, if you have batteries and you have a radio and you were in the disaster zone, you were still able to communicate. While if you have a mobile phone or a TV set, you cannot, because the flood has interrupted the power supply. So in this sense, there are new interactions that need to be built. The most advanced in this field are our friends of Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union, because of course this is the area of the world where this kind of problem are more frequently rising, and I'm pleased to say that there is in these days a international conference organized by our friends in Indonesia, I think, about how broadcasting cope with the disaster recovery. And there will be next year in Sendai, in Japan, in the area affected by the tsunami, a world conference of the UN about disaster recovery, to which we will participate, and we are already committed. And this brings me to the last point I want to mention, that is the awareness. As media, we have a specific role, that is the role to create awareness, because most of these problems are related to the behavior of a single citizen. We cannot tackle really in deep the problem of the climate change and the energy consumption if we don't create an awareness among the citizens of the impact of of the climate change and of the possible solution that are not only solutions by business, by the industry or by the government, but need to be taken by each individual. And broadcasting still is the most powerful tool to arrive and to share within communities a certain kind of awareness, and even sharing practical solution and practical suggestion that could be applied at the daily life. So there is a lot to do. We do within our community, we do within international organization, we do at the national level, we do at the international level, and we continue in this way. And we will, through this dynamic coalition, we will continue to inform you of the progress, and we are ready, of course, to accept the suggestion for improving what we are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. And I think, as it is dynamic coalition, not just a workshop, I think maybe next, if you agree, further, we just instead of just asking questions, I would like to, everyone here to introduce themselves and from each organizations, and why you think, what you see for you important in that in ICTs and climate change topic, and how is the organization working with that, if that's okay. I think we should have a microphone here, and I'll try to do you have a microphone? So is it, if it's okay, just kind of starting from the beginning.
Hi there. My name is Steven Renderos. I work with a network in the United States called the Media Action Grassroots Network. We're a network of about 175 locally based organizations in the U.S., based in communities, in rural communities and some urban areas, as well as predominantly working with communities of color, so African Americans, Latinos, and immigrant communities. So for us, I think this issue is relatively new in terms of thinking of the relationship between ICTs and climate change, but I know that a lot of the organizations within our network are very keen on climate change and doing a lot of work around that. So I think being able to build a bridge between the platforms that we use in order to organize and share stories, and also being aware of both the potential of this technology to be applied towards climate change, but also to be very aware of what some of the adverse risks are in terms of the prominent use of technology in our society. I think those are things that we want to create linkages to, so this has been very helpful.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Ejael Casaperalta. I work with an organization called the Center for Rural Strategies in the United States, and I coordinate a group called the Rural Broadband Policy Group, and our goal is to increase internet access in rural and remote communities. The Center for Rural Strategies also manages a coalition called the National Rural Assembly, which brings together over 500 organizations in the United States that are working in rural communities to discuss relevant issues, and natural resources and climate change is one of those main topics. Learning about how ICT and rural issues connect is something that is in our agenda. And it's also, I really appreciate the remarks by the Minister of Information from Bangladesh, because I feel that in the United States there's not a lot of conversation about how climate change impacts primarily rural communities, and we are at this predicament where having access to emergency information, emergency systems information, it's crucial for rural communities, so we don't have access in the United States in rural areas, but at the same time it has a tremendous impact in our communities and the sustainability of our communities. Two quick examples. I am from southern the United States, an area of South Texas, which is right by the Gulf Coast. So we get a lot of hurricanes, and increasingly we have been impacted by stronger hurricanes. And when the hurricanes strike, we lose internet signal if you have it. So telephones are actually our most reliable method of communications. But then thinking about how all of our communications are powered, a region of the United States that has been devastated by coal extraction is the Appalachian region, where mountains are destroyed to extract coal that creates energy, right? So these are issues that really impact our safety, our sustainability, and the ability of our communities to progress.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Bobby Flame. I work for the Department of Justice. So I think I'm the odd man out here. I really am not involved with climate change, but it's something that I'm very interested in and something that I want to, I guess, get more involved in. And I think it's a very serious discussion. And I'm here for a totally separate reason, here at the IGF for internet governance and cybercrime and everything. But when I saw this, I think it's something that's very pertinent today. And you're starting with a small group, but I anticipate within a couple of years it's going to be a much larger group. So I'm happy to be here, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Hiroshi Saki. Came from Japan, Tokyo. And also I'm working for the university as a professor. Also I'm serving as a board of trustee for the ISAC and the JPNIC. Several topics you're covering about the climate change issues. As you know, as many speakers referenced, we have a serious tsunami. Also, we have a lot of local flash in these days because of the climate change. I working more than 10 years about the detecting or monitoring the weather information. Sometimes fighting with governments because the weather system monitoring was a subject for the military operation in the past. and also very strong regulated way of the monitoring of the weather is, established. Though there are a huge number of sensors we have. Say the car is one example, getting the huge information about the, around you, the mobile sensors actually. So that kind of thing, always a government or a government agency asking very accurate information for disaster case or monitoring the weather, that's bad. That is subject for the Internet of Things, for example, right? So that is one of the things we should think about how monitor the Earth from the viewpoint of the Internet of Things point of view. The other point you mentioned about cloud computing point of view, I'm working also about data center business. Then we start to share with the local government, Tokyo. Data center was bad guy to consume a huge energy. Though once you have cloud computing or a virtual machine, a migration from the usual office, huge amount of the energy saving you can achieve. Actually, we successfully reduced more than 50% energy using cloud computing right after the earthquake 2011. The return of investment was only 6 months. What? That's not joke. So local governments start to promoting use of the cloud computing in order to reduce the carbon footprint from the Tokyo. Also, the Japanese government having some kind of tax incentive or supporting the finance for the companies, especially small company, be able to migrate computers, servers to the data center in order to reduce carbon footprint. That is one of the example, of the how reducing the carbon footprint using ICT or internet system. The other point you mentioned about broadcasting thing, as he mentioned, of course, TV set never work without any power. Then the battery equipment works fine. So after the tsunami, only the battery running personal computers running fine. And also, telephone system, cellular phone never work. SMS never. The work after the earthquake during the blackout was the streaming TV program. One of the very brave younger high school guy, taking a TV program, then the capturing and sending to the streaming video over the internet. So the people who have the battery-powered, PC, where the internet was, then the people can see those TV programs, even in Tokyo. Actually, Tokyo has a huge, blackout. So most of the people cannot see the TV program because of blackout. Though thank you for the internet, we could see the TV program that is illegal broadcasting from the viewpoint of regulation. You can think about that, right? And also, after the earthquake, a lot of access point to the cellular phone system gone. Though some of the area we cover them through the satellite IP broadcasting system. IP-based satellite system as a backhaul for the 3G cellular phone system. Also, the Wi-Fi communication. It was very powerful in the area for not the metropolitan area. So we have a lot of experience about those, disaster mitigation, disaster recovery using the internet. Though, as I mentioned, we can share a lot of experience. How use the internet, and also in the disaster case, Japan experienced why the internet is useful for the disaster case. The telephone system never worked. So that is yet another lesson. And also the other point would be, forget that. Okay. I think that's enough.
Thank you.
Hello?
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Mohammad Abdul Haq. I'm from Bangladesh Internet Governance Forum, Secretary General. I am coming, His Excellency Mr. Hassanullah Kinu already saying, I'm just watching and learning this process, how ICT help the climate change affected people and develop our nation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
I have no question.
So there is more, I think Professor Jonas wants to later. So the suggestion was that because we are a dynamic coalition, and so in terms of we're trying to work together here. So the idea was just to introduce each other, and also how that topic is important from your perspective and from your organization's perspective. So if you could say a few words. I'm not pushing if you do. Okay, thank you very much. So I think we've heard some very interesting remarks here, and I think one thing I would like not to forget, so before you leave, just once we finish, to give us your contact so we can include you in the work, because I think that's a very important interest here. And we hear very interesting remarks in terms of how communities are interested in that topic, and how we could reach out to or help communities to do that important work. Yeah, because as I said, there is still a knowledge gaps. There may be energy there might not be knowledge. So how to combine those two to make sure that the change can happen everywhere. And also it's interesting to see that these problems, again, are not unique to some countries. So Minister gave a very good overview from Bangladesh perspective, but then we see that, United States as well, so from very different parts of the world, maybe even different developmental levels of the countries, but the problems, they face, they sometimes could be very comparable and similar. So how we can share those experiences, I think that's a valid platform. And then we hear very interesting experience from Japan on very specific solutions. So I will basically, so maybe, okay, Giacomo, so please have that point.
I think that there are some interesting stimulation, because the idea of this dynamic coalition is also to bring back to the daily work suggestion on which area we can improve and bring something relevant. In the thing I've heard from the participants, there are some further problems that bring me to reflect. For instance, you say that you make a huge saving in transferring databases to the cloud. But I'm thinking that this means simply that you transfer the problem to somebody else. Because the cloud has to be on another server somewhere. So unless that we are thinking, and this could be an idea that has to be tackled and discussed, that we move the servers, all the servers in Norway and Greenland, then where there will be no problem of refrigeration, but the problem is simply shift from one side to another. And we need to think global. I think that the climate change endeavor is to find global solution, not to move the problem from one side. I'm not saying that you made the wrong thing. You made the right thing, but you think locally while the problem is global. Because what the Bangladesh experience is a problem that is not linked to Bangladesh, but is a global problem. Like when you say that the Gulf of Mexico hurricanes affect your area, is not a problem that stops at the border between Texas and Mexico. It's a global problem and need to be tackled at the global level. So this is something that probably we need to. There was a data that in our discussion that you struck me very much, is that there is a global trend in all the sectors except in developing countries of reducing the carbon emission, except in the area of ICT, the only area where the trend is the opposite, is the server areas. Because everything that is moved into the servers, reducing other kind of analog industries, is having an impact because everything now it goes through servers somewhere. So this is probably one of the main areas in which we need to concentrate our reflection. The other suggestion that I got is that, as is completely right, and even on our side, at the ITU at the moment there are two separate ways of tackling the issue. One is the disaster recovery and the communication in emergency, etc., etc., and the other one is the climate change and the reduction of carbon emission. Probably we need to make more interactive the two things because the problems are absolutely related, we know. But also I think that the point that has been mentioned, that to make more resilient the internet communication in disaster situation is very important. Using all possible technologies. The example you made of using the TV streamed over the computer system is interesting because you shift from one media that was not accessible to another one that was accessible. And this flexibility now with the NGN, there are technical solutions that makes this more easily done. So thank you for this simulation, and I think that Thomas have some food for thought to bring this back at the ITU for better targeting our next work. Yes, please.
Please, yeah.
Well, Japanese people realize the reason why Japanese economy hasn't collapsed against the tsunami was all of the data center survived to run more than 72 hours after the tsunami. That's the reason why digital economy never be stopped. All of the enterprise activity going to be covered by the digital network computer server. Actually, most of the company's activity is based on the digitize, the online, processing is the key of the economy activities. So because of the data center works fine, the Japanese economy never be stopped, even because of the blackout, right? And also regarding the energy issue you mentioned, that is the issue of the investment into the air conditioning system, for example. The data center using the most state-of-art air conditioning system, which is always improving a lot. For example, when you use the 10-year-old air conditioning system, recent air conditioning system improved more than 40 or 30% energy efficiency. In a case of the usual office, your air conditioning system lifetime would be 30 years or so. Means very ineffective air conditioning system running in your office. So in the data center, because of the data center is very expensive for the air conditioning system from the viewpoint of the business operational point of view, they're always making a very efficient equipment as well as operation. That is the reason why actually the carbon footprint of the server operation compared with the usual office versus the data center is fatally different, critically different. So that is reason why we successfully reduce a lot of energy by the cloud computing migration to the server room or data center. That is now happening in order to reduce carbon footprint from every single office. Also, that is yet another possibility to demand control of the energy using those data center operation, because it's going to be quite easy to control that. And also the data center has the code generators there. Means in a case of the power insufficient case, data center could help easily because of it is the huge power consumer, as well as the be able to contribute the power to the community. So that is we are seriously thinking about from the business point of view.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I have a question for the Minister of Information from Bangladesh. Something that we see in Texas is that telephone networks have strong regulations in the United States, which means that when a natural disaster hits, telephone networks are required to have emergency battery backup. So that's why when a natural disaster hits, they are able to continue functioning and someone can call their family in another place. But those regulations don't exist in internet service. So when a disaster hits, you cannot use the cloud the way that Japan is able to do that, because not everyone has it, and it's not working because it's not required to have its own energy backup. You mentioned regulations that are barriers in Bangladesh to provide more deployment of ICT in your country. Can you talk about those regulations a little bit? I'd like to learn.
Thank you very much. What I tried to mention that in the disaster-prone zone, when the telecommunication infrastructure is damaged, as it happened in the Japan when tsunami hit, then because we are experiencing this for many years, so we have switched over to the radio frequency and to mobile networks. So that is one area where we are connecting people very quickly before the cyclone is hit, and during that cyclone hitting the target, then after the recovery plan. The point is that I discuss about the frequencies. So here we need to intervene from the government to so that a common frequency is developed for the disaster-prone zone. So normally these telecommunication resources, the allotment of spectrum and frequency for the, especially for the disaster management, that is not within the purview of law. So naturally in the business and private sector and the government sector. So what I was mentioning, that the government and the private sector and the international community should come forward to remove these bottlenecks, so that the frequencies and the telecommunication resources can be allotted for, especially for the disaster. That is the thing.
Okay, thank you very much. You would like, yeah.
In the case of Japan, after the earthquake,
We have two regulational change in telecommunications as well as the recommendation to the data center people. Actually, one of the things was the cell phone system has a quite serious, battery dry up. Therefore, we asking them about 72 hours battery backup at every single access point in order to continue the wireless, 6-signal sending. The other lesson was the voice communication didn't work. Though the people want to speak out to the cellular phone. Therefore, we're asking every single cellular phone provider, they should provide kind of voicemail using the same interface as you're making a call. Meaning you turn the dial, then speak out, that's it. Then the voice has been recorded. Afterward, the voicemail is going to be sent through the backbone network. That is one of the things we are doing after the earthquake. Regarding the data center she mentioned, the data center is naturally has to continue the service because of the professional service for the enterprise or corporations. Therefore, they have their very strong disaster case. Meaning, as I mentioned, battery backup as well as the cogenerators, as well as earthquake, treatment. So that is not the regulation actually. Though a Japanese government actually having the regulation about earthquake prevention from the viewpoint of the structure of the architect. And then, other point is totally business oriented. Naturally, the internet always facing to the disaster, right?
in the case of SNS, once upon a time you have very bad, proportion, then huge access going to come, or your bot, or kind of attack, accessing. That is the reason why the internet has been survived, even after the earthquake.
Thank you. Just think, do.
No, it's okay. No. Thanks. He explained the thing.
Thank you very much. So I think it's good to have this. That is the value of this coalition, and to share experiences and to see how the solutions from different places can work. So I think just using a few remaining minutes for the questions, what's next, I think, because it's always, it's always, I think, one of the important things to think, So meeting here is, it's just a checkpoint, where we are, what we're doing, but, what's important to think for the 8th meeting, and coming up for the 8th meeting, and in between, what should we do? So are there any views on projects? I'll give the word to the minister afterwards, but I think first, before maybe there's something from the floor, just from what you're hearing, and maybe there is some views. What do you think there are important topics that, as a community, we could work together? Not, on different organizations could contribute. Maybe Giacomo, you have views.
Yeah, I think that for the next year, if we have to think what are the priorities for the next year for broadcasting, part of tackle the issues that I mentioned you before, I think that the broadcasting have an important role in keeping informed the population about the citizen about what's happening. And next year we will have the Paris conference, in which this issue need to be discussed. We arrived to this conference after some situation in which there was partially not successful decision. Let's say the Copenhagen summit was not so successful as we expect. And so I think that it is important to make aware the citizen of the importance of this issue, and to make them more active when they go to their government in asking a more energetic and a more speed process for tackling the issue of the climate change, because the only one that can push are the citizens. And now we are, especially in Europe, in this time of crisis, we are seeing coming back again the fact that we prefer to have the economic progress at any cost in the short term, and we are ready to put aside the long-term concern. The fact that there is now again the debate in Europe about the use of the coal, because in the short terms this reduced the cost of the energy, and there are cuts in the supporting of alternative energies, source of energies, create this false contradiction between economic progress and the sustainability of the planet. And I think that it's important for the media to be strong in tackle these issues, giving to the citizen all the elements, and then they judge. Of course, if you prefer the bread today instead of a safer environment in the future, but you have to decide that with the full awareness. Then we will see what will be the final issue.
Thank you very much. Any views from the floor on that as well? So, okay, so maybe then I'll just ask the minister also to kind of for the way forward, from what we're discussing today, what do you think are the most important elements that we could work on?
Thank you. Very important is that when you adapt and mitigate with the climate change, the first and foremost point is that you must have the data. So if you don't have the data, you cannot do anything. So ICT is a tool by which you can collect the data, analyze the data, and come up with the possible solutions. So for the risk reduction or recovery plan or disaster management, whatever is the case, data is very important. For example, in the coastal belt of the world, as in Bangladesh, there is the sea level is very, at certain point it is 10 meters to 50 meters, up to 300 kilometers, 200 kilometers. Here the fisheries are there. So the collecting data and monitoring this depth and the fishery network is very important to save the biodiversity of this particular coastal zone. So I'm trying to make a point that how you monitor, how you have a surveillance on the total effect of the climate change on the biodiversity, fisheries, biological species and other things, inland and on the sea also. So that is very important. So I will ask that this how you collect the data more efficiently and how you store the data, analyze the data, and give the possible solutions for risk reduction, disaster management plan, and after disaster recovery plan. And you can go for subheadings. For example, in the disaster-prone areas, what is the alternate way of livelihood? There is another area where ICT can be applied very efficiently, taking up best practices and from the people living in that area who are switching over to the alternative livelihood. So about the sea, fisheries, biodiversity, biological problems on the inland, about the course of river, there is another thing. If you can analyze the course of the river for 100 years and 200 years, then you can predict the flood and all these things, and the behavior of the people living in the river banks and all these things. So my suggestion will be the way forward next time. There is one thing, and another thing, how you allocate special frequency and harmonize frequency regionally and globally for disaster management. That is a technical solution. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to His Excellency. Thank you very much to everyone. I think it's a cozy discussion, but very productive. Thank you very much for all your contributions, because that's how it is important. It shouldn't be just someone speaking to anyone, but it's all of us conversing and finding the best solutions together, and that's what this event is about, and that's what Dynamic Coalition is about. So just a reminder before you leave, if leave me your contacts so we can hook you up to this work, and we can follow up not only next year but also in the during the year. And also on 11, just a reminder, we have at 11 we have in Galala Hall the side event on this topic. We'll have the 4 presentations from European consumers, from UNESCO, from much more detailed presentation from Giacomo on the broadcasters' work and others on that important topic. So if you're interested in that, we'd be very happy to see you there. Thank you very much.
So weather sensor put on the access point nearby antenna. Then the antenna system, the telephone system has the network. So that is good very used when so it's more than 3,000 weather sensor units put on the access point. So collecting all of data every 10 minutes. That is not easy. You can
Thank you very much. Control.